In this lesson, we're going to be talking about doing static malware analysis. Now, by static malware analysis, I'm talking about doing an analysis of the file in a static fashion, meaning we aren't actually going to run the executable to see what happens. The file's just going to be sitting on disk, and we're not actually going to be running it. So we're going to protect our system in that way, and we can maybe get some additional information about what's going on with the program that we're going to be running. Now, one of the first things that you could do, I'll show you this utility called strings. And this is a pretty simple first thing to do, and sometimes we can get some information out of it. So I've got this program called strings here, and I'm actually just going to run strings on itself, and just to show you how this works. So what strings does is strings goes through an executable and finds sections where there are strings of printable ASCII characters that are null terminated, and once it finds those, it can print them out. Now, this output from strings seems pretty clear what we've got going on here. This is actually a piece of Microsoft code. We've got Redmond, Washington, Microsoft Corporation, Microsoft code signing, sysinternals utilities, which is, of course, where I got this particular piece of software from. So you can see different Microsoft URLs that are installed here, and these are all built into the code. So this is pretty clear what we've got going on here. We've actually got the name of the author, Mark Russinovich. So as I said, strings can actually provide you some pretty useful information. Now, what I'm going to do here is open up a different program that can give me a different set of information. And what I've got here is a program called Exe Explorer. And Exe Explorer is going to open up an executable. I'm going to go into a directory here called Zeus, and let's just open up bot.exe. So what I've got here is it's pulled that executable apart, and it's given me some information here. So I can see that it's destined for a 32-bit machine. This isn't 64-bit code, it's 32-bit code. It tells me that it's a portable executable, which means it's an executable that's designed for a Windows operating system. And you can see over here there's a tab called Strings, and it does the same thing that the Strings utility did. It's just that this particular utility, Exe Explorer, also provides additional information. Now, this piece of software here, if I do the strings, you can see a lot of function calls here, like GDI plus startup and GDI plus shutdown. Those are graphics devices. So the GDI suite of functions have to do with graphics. So whatever this program is doing, there's a graphical component. I can see a create stream, which means it's probably doing some sort of either file or network communication. On HGlobal, it's not clear to me what's going on there. Although if you look 2 lines above 47 on to line 45, it says GDIP save image to stream. So it looks like we're grabbing some images or graphics and we are saving them out in some fashion. So if I keep scrolling down, I can see a number of other functions. I can also see a lot of just garbage here. And sometimes that garbage is just, we found something that looked like a string but actually wasn't, and it could just be some opcodes, or it could be other pieces of data that look like strings but aren't actually strings. I've got the different sections here, so you can see this Exe Explorer actually pulls the whole executable apart and presents you with a pretty unified view of what's going on. So you get a lot of information about the executable. Now, I've got information about the executable. I've got some strings that may provide me with some information about what's going on. And I could actually also run this utility called PEID. And what PEID is going to do is it's going to tell me whether a particular piece of software is packed or not. So the first thing I need to do is I need to find a file to open up. I'm going to go back into Zeus and see if I can find a useful executable here. So let's open up this one. And this says nothing was actually found. It does say UPX in the EP section, and when I did a deep scan, it actually says UPX. So this particular piece of software will look for packers, and what packers are is a way of obscuring pieces of code so it makes it harder to see what's going on. So all of that garbage that we got in the strings could very well have just been the fact that we had a packed executable, and so we didn't actually or couldn't actually see what was happening with it because the strings had actually been compressed or encrypted in a particular way, so we wouldn't be able to see that. So seeing that something is packed suggests that it may be a piece of malware, and different packers may be associated with different pieces of malware, so we may get some information about the executable based on the packer that happens to be used and the version of the packer that happens to be used. Now, we're doing static analysis, and so we're just looking at components of the file itself. So I could go into Zeus again, and I could find that same executable, and what I could do is I could bring up properties on it and see if there's anything in the details that tells me anything. Now, a normal program developed by a reputable vendor is going to have a description, a copyright, a product name, a product version, maybe even a file version. It's going to have information along those lines. The fact that this one doesn't suggests to me that either it was written by somebody who's not aware of how to set that information, or it's written by somebody who doesn't actually want to fill out that information. So we can find out a little something about the author of the program just by looking at the properties of it. Now, I've shown you a few different tactics and techniques for looking at malware in a static way, so it's not actually being run. And the reason for that is because, of course, there's danger in running malware. Now, in the next lesson, we're going to be talking about doing dynamic malware analysis, but that requires either a sandbox or some system that's not connected to anything so that you're not doing any damage to the system or anyone else anywhere near you on the network. So dynamic analysis gives us the ability to look at the malware actually in operation. In static malware analysis, we're really just looking at hints from the executable or the file itself to see if we can figure out what's happening just by looking at the file and what's in it and the information that we can pick up from digging through it a little bit.